I am a scientist, and I like numbers. If you want to know something, measure it. Food tracking apps have made it easier than ever to document everything you eat as you eat it. And there's science to show that food tracking enhances weight loss. But then there's the psychology side, suggesting that obsessive tracking can distort your relationship with food. So are food tracking apps actually healthy for you? And should you track your food every day? Let's science it. Hey, welcome to Nourishable. I'm Dr. Lara. I already had a PhD in nutrition before I had ever used a food tracking app, so I was pretty clear on what makes up a healthy diet. But I was surprised at how much I learned from just a few days with MyFitnessPal. I was shocked to see how many calories were in my wine from happy hour, that a standard serving of ice cream is infuriatingly small, and that avocados have fiber. You're more than just a healthy fat. I had several aha moments about my diet from using a food tracking app. Can these apps make everyone have aha moments to get us all healthier? The theory is that the act of tracking increases awareness to then change behavior. In nutrition research, we call this dietary self-monitoring. You're monitoring your own diet. And this idea about awareness kept popping up in a survey that I ran with my Nourishable audience. One MyFitnessPal user said, the app helped me realize how certain items, like beer, wine, and bread, had hugely negative impacts on my macros, and consequently I severely limited them. Another person said that it has definitely helped my understanding of serving sizes, and that all those little unhealthy bites here and there add up. Other more scientific surveys had similar findings. So let's dig into that science. Some studies have used food tracking apps to encourage general healthy eating. More fruits and veggies, less fast food, fewer sugar-sweetened beverages. The results have been pretty mixed, though it's hard to compare all the studies together because they use many different apps. One study showed that people using a veggie tracking app ate 1 to 2 more servings of veggies per day, though other studies didn't find any improvements. So overall, maybe food tracking apps improve healthy eating, but it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution. Apps have to be targeted to specific populations. Maybe an app trying to get teens to drink less soda would be more effective by gamifying it through TikTok. But that probably won't work for my mom. What's TikTok?
I don't listen to it or watch it, but it's another something like Instagram or whatever, tweeting things.
The most research is with weight loss programs. These programs encourage dietary self-monitoring along with many other approaches to change behavior. It's the write it as you bite it method. One study divided people into 2 groups. One group used the Lose It app plus texting with a health coach. The control group just had 1 diet counseling session. After 3 months, the people using the app lost more weight and shrunk their waistline. And that sounds like a win for food tracking apps. But I wanted to get a sense of how consistent this result was. Does using a food tracking app always improve weight loss? So I looked for a meta-analysis. A meta-analysis is when scientists combine many studies together that are investigating the same question to see whether they lead to the same answer. It's like when you're on Amazon reading reviews about that sourdough starter that you want to buy. You can trust a 4.7 star rating more if it came from 10,000 reviews rather than just a few. When it comes to food tracking apps and weight loss, the meta-analysis says yes. Using diet tracking apps consistently yielded more weight loss than not using apps, at least in the short term. Most studies were around 6 months long. But how much do you need to use the app in order for it to be effective? The science says the more, the better. People who log in more frequently and keep up food tracking at least 3 days per week lose more weight. What's even more important than initially shedding those pounds is maintaining that weight loss. Many people experience weight cycling, where they start a diet and lose weight, but then they stop and they gain it back, like a yo-yo. The goal for good health is to be a successful maintainer, someone who loses weight and keeps it off. For successful maintainers, their weight is like standing on a Bozu ball, being dynamically stable despite external influences. And the science says that long-term dietary self-monitoring is an important tool for successful maintainers. What the science isn't so clear about is what method is best for self-monitoring. Paper and pencil? Food tracking apps? Posting all your meals on Instagram? What I found especially interesting was this. The consistency of food logging was important for maintaining weight loss, but the level of detail didn't seem to matter. I interpret this to mean that a rough monitoring is important, but measuring all your food in teaspoons isn't necessary in the long run. Food tracking apps are convenient tools for weight loss and maintenance. Therefore, everyone should use them to get and stay healthy, the end. But there is another side to this coin. Using food tracking apps to document everything you eat can naturally make you pretty obsessive, and this can distort your relationship with food. Instead of a comforting bowl of chili, it becomes a set of numbers. 340 calories, 20 grams of protein, 17 grams of fat. Strict calorie caps and macro targets gamify eating in a dichotomous way. This food has too many calories, bad. You've gone over your saturated fat target, fail. If every day was like today, you'd gain weight, terrible. This black and white thinking about food and weight is detrimental for both physical and mental health. Many dietitians express concerns that these apps can trigger, maintain, or exacerbate eating disorders. I've been experimenting with a whole bunch of apps while researching this episode, and sometimes I felt like they were driving me towards some disordered eating behaviors. Like, I felt the need to ask the app for permission to eat a snack even when I was hungry. Some of my survey respondents expressed these feelings too. One person said, "I thought about it all the time. It became the leading factor in my food decisions, to the detriment of broader healthy decision making." Others said that it made them feel guilty or shameful about food. So on one hand, using food tracking apps seems beneficial for weight loss, but on the other hand, they can wreak havoc on your relationship with food. How do you know if food tracking apps are helping or harming you? I reached out to registered dietitian nutritionist and certified specialist in sports dietetics, Allison Knott, to get some insight.
Sometimes people are using them as a way to raise awareness, and they don't become a core part of their decision-making process around food. They don't experience a behavior where they are almost obsessing over needing to track everything that they're eating. And then you have the other extreme, and there's often, spaces in the middle of the spectrum too, but the other extreme where I've seen where people are feeling like they need to put every single thing into this app, and it controls what they decide to eat, when they eat, to the point that they're ignoring some of those internal cues around eating.
Do you feel like you can see particular red flags that would help an individual decide, is food tracking helping me or is it hindering me?
I think the red flags come up in different ways depending on the person. So for some, it might be a obsession of anxiety or feeling stress if they can't track. Some of them it might be adjustments of normal lifestyle behaviors because they can't track. So it's interfering with social behavior, interfering with schedules, or they're making decisions based off of whether or not they can actually put the food into the app or not. How do you deal with if you go to a party or you go to a restaurant and there's not a label on the food? So then are you turning to decisions where you avoid those scenarios because you can't put it into the app? And that's where, it can become really damaging.
Right.
To how you relate to food and your lifestyle as a whole. I talk a lot about eating patterns over time and how it works together. It's not necessarily just about the single meal, the single food. It's more about the context as a whole over a period of time.
What techniques do you feel like you could recommend if people want to have that awareness about their diet but not be so married to tracking everything?
I would recommend starting by looking at, if you are tracking, thinking about what would a day look like if you didn't. And I also like to remind people that we need to come back to some of the internal hunger cues. That's really key, because those shift every day. You might have greater hunger some days than others. The app doesn't know the answer to all of that. You know the answer to that personally. And so it's kind of relearning how to trust that message too, the internal sort of feelings of hunger and satisfaction and fullness. If you're going to continue with tracking, then maybe it's committing to also tracking the feeling of hunger. It also plays a little bit, I think, into this either or sort of thought of, if I'm eating healthy, then this is exactly what it looks like. It's very rigid. I'm tracking and doing all of these things exactly right. Or it's the total opposite of that.
Right.
can be a challenge to get somebody to understand that there's an in-between part there where you don't have to be rigid, you don't have to use the tracking app. You also don't have to have, chaos necessarily around food. There is a middle ground here. It's just trying to figure out what that is. I know I probably can't have it both ways when it comes to apps. Like, I can't say that they have their place, and I also don't necessarily want people using them long term, but that really is the way I feel. Like, I do think that some of the good apps can teach you a lot. Mm-hmm. The long term piece is where I run into an issue, and that's just a sticky place.
Right.
You can't recommend you should use it if there is also that risk of going into a disordered eating pattern or some other, negative outcome.
So what's the answer? Will using food tracking apps help or harm?
As with most things in nutrition and health, I don't think there is a yes or no answer.
Sciencing this question is really hard because all of the studies are using different apps, different control groups, and short time frames. So coming away with a strong conclusion is really tough. Plus, you aren't just a statistic in a weight loss study. You are an individual who is seeking a positive relationship with food, a relationship that encompasses all of the intricacies of nourishment, habit, and culture. But based on the science as it stands, and through expert opinions like Allison's, here are my nourishable takeaways. Food tracking apps can be great tools for education and awareness, but watch out for red flags that are indicating a turn towards obsession. Link to the National Eating Disorders Association in the description for resources if you or someone you love is struggling. Allison and I talked about using food tracking apps as a tool for recalibration. Maybe it's a new job, a different commute, or a 7-month quarantine due to the coronavirus. New routines change our eating habits, for better or for worse. Using a food tracking app for a few days every few months can help raise awareness about your habits, target particular factors to shift, and help recalibrate you towards a healthier eating pattern. Since the level of detail isn't important in the long run, you can try out some less cumbersome tools, like an app that helps you count servings of fruits and veggies. I'm doing a whole slew of food tracking app reviews, so definitely check those out. That's what science tastes like. Thanks for tuning in to Nourishable. Check out all my references in the video description, and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all things nutrition. Now, did I see on your website that you take virtual clients?
I do.
So if anyone watching wants to talk to Allison some more, can they just reach out to you through your website?
Yes, it's anewwow.co. And yeah, virtual clients, I focus, like I said, mostly on that fitness space and the everyday athlete. But I see a range of clients, and I'm happy to talk with anyone. I offer free 15-minute discovery calls so we can chat and figure out if it's a good fit and then take it from there.